Hello everyone, welcome back to Sports Time HQ. I am your host Fernando, and joining me today is a new guy. Actually, it is no longer Keith. Keith will not be here for the rest of the season, but it is our boy, guest star Keith. Keith, how are you doing today? I mean, Keith, Greg. So
I am not the Keith you were looking for. I'm doing all right though. Usually when I fill in like for somebody else, I'm like, you'll notice I am not this person.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on, Craig. If no one knows him, he does all fantasy content, all sports content. And Craig, you can talk a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get on to fantasy football.
Yeah, so for people that are new to me, you can find me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. The S is not on the end because it doesn't fit, because character limits. You can find me on YouTube at Coach Craig Sports. I post up double-digit videos a week, so right now I'm doing daily NBA DFS picks. Doing pretty well in that, but then we have fantasy football and NFL DFS as well, so 4 to 5 days of those videos as well. Tuesdays the waiver wire day, which we'll be talking a little bit of waiver wires here as well. I got to record that video for myself later today. Wednesday I do the starts and sets for the Thursday night football game. Thursday I take a look at the single game showdown slate for DFS. Friday I'm doing starts and sits nowadays for the Saturday game, since we do have Saturday games. Before that I was doing some dollar store stacks, was what I called it. Is just cheap quarterbacks you can pair with some of their wide receivers to save some money in DFS. And then Saturday, typically, it's been a little hit or miss this year, but I do the starts and sets for all the other remaining teams in play still.
Well,
and then let me see. I'm trying to remember what else. I got too much stuff going on all the time, but Friday, or now it's Saturday. It says Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm on the point after with Mr. Julian Barnett as well. We go over the injuries in play for the week. We go over some monkey knife fight. We build a single game showdown slate for DraftKings as well for the Sunday night football slate. We were doing it for Monday night, but as of late, they haven't been putting the prices out in time to do it for Monday night. So mainly the monkey knife fight, the injuries, and then the single game slate for Sunday night. And then I got a little bit of other stuff going on too as well. Part of True North. Definitely check them out as well. Revamped website over there before the season. Definitely a lot of great content going up there. I haven't really written too much myself this year, but got a little too busy for that. But I also have my own Patreon too as well, where you can make a small donation. And I have the snap count spreadsheets there. So what I do is I compile all the snap counts for every player, every position, for offense and defense, put them all in one place. I do not know any other place that has it all in one page. So like if you want the Jets, you can see the whole Jets offense. Like, yes, you can go on Pro Football Reference or whatever, click on Elijah Moore, and you'll see every single week, but you don't see all the other wide receivers lined up next to him. So that's something that I've done for about the past year or so. I did last year for offense, but this year I just decided to do it for defense as well. And then I have what I call my matchups sheet too as well. And I have cornerbacks and linebackers listed there, kind of where they line up, whether it's a good matchup or not. And then I have tabs where it's the wide receiver lined up, where they line up left, right, slot, corner, left, right, slot, and then the tight ends, whether they line up in line, in slot, or out wide. And Mike Gesicki's not a tight end. I'll say that every time. And if his agent, if they franchise tag him, I say this on like everything. If they franchise tag him and his agent does not fight for a wide receiver designation tag, it's crazy because he only plays like 4 snaps in line all game. So on
Wow,
average throughout the season.
that's a good point. That's a good point to put out.
Mhm.
Well, you definitely do a lot.
Yep.
That's for sure. So make sure to go follow him at Coach Craig Sport. No S at the end because he couldn't fit it. We're gonna go into our storylines of the week. It's been a crazy week 16. It is now championship week of week 17 for most leagues. And if you had Joe Burrow on your fantasy lineup, you probably advanced the fantasy championship. Burrow had 525 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's a 26th quarterback ever to throw over 500 yards. What's your thoughts on that? Do you have Burrow in any of your leagues?
I don't think I do, but I was definitely on the wrong end of the Burrow train in one of my dynasty leagues where I was the clear cut number 1 seed. I only had 2 losses all year, and then he had Burrow mixing and like somebody else on his team that just like went crazy, and I'm like, oh, that sucks. But I
I
mean,
couldn't
I
believe
can't.
it.
But I mean, the secondary for the Ravens was so banged up this week. Everybody's either injured or on COVID. Anthony Everett, who was like their best remaining corner, I think he got injured in that game too, because when I was doing snap counts, he only played like it was either 14 or 24%. I can't remember off the top of my head. And then somebody else came in for him too. So they really just didn't have a lot of guys out there. And myself personally, especially like in DFS, I was loading up on T. Higgins this week because Jamar Chase had the crazy good game versus them last time. So they're like, well, we're going to bracket him, and then T. Higgins will have the big game. It turns out they both have big games anyways. But like, if you just played a whole bunch of Bengals, you were doing all right. But it's hard to know exactly what to take with Joe Burrow because he's shown these big flashes, but he's also shown like other times this year where he's still making mistakes at the same time. So he's a good young quarterback. He's still learning. He's still getting better. This offensive line, which we thought was going to be a major issue at the beginning of the season, really hasn't been quite as bad as we thought either. But they brought in Riley Reef to play right tackle, and he was doing all right before he went on IR. Now, some of these other young guys stepped up at the guard position too. Quentin Span's kind of gone back to being a decent guard as well. So definitely a lot of interesting there. I mean, I think they're still going to bulk it up a little bit this offseason, but this is a pretty scary team, like once they get rolling. So, and it's kind of nice to see this team actually get rolling with Zach Taylor as the head coach, because I've been a fan of Zach Taylor.
I've been a fan of Zach Taylor. The only thing I just was concerned about was they didn't address the offensive line in the draft in the first round. But I mean, obviously that's kind of paying off because you got Jamar Chase, and that connection, Chase and Burrow, have just been phenomenal. So, let's go on to your.
I'll say one thing real quick too. They brought back their old offensive line coach before the season, who was actually a pretty good offensive line coach. So I think that's made a big difference, especially with some of these younger players. And who's the guy? Akeem Adeniji, I think is his name. He is out of Kansas, 6th round pick a year ago, and he's been playing guard since he's come back. That's really been a good spot for him. He's Jackson Carman was playing there earlier, but I've never been big on him. So nice to see them kind of step up in that role, though. Regardless.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought that the Bengals would be sitting on top of the division right now? I mean, this has been a hectic division. The AFC South, AFC North has really been everywhere. Like, I mean, it's crazy. But let's go down to the AFC South. I mean, let's talk about your Texans. Your Texans upsetting the Chargers 41-29. I mean, that is the highest scoring offense that they've had all season. They've only averaged almost 20 points a game. That's it.
Yeah, it's not been pretty this year, and this was definitely unexpected. And as a Texans fan, I recommend pick up Chargers defense last week. I played them myself. They got like -5 points in ESPN leagues last week, and this just really came out of nowhere. But that Chargers defense cannot stop the run to save their life. They gave up over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns to sexy Rex Burkhead. So that's kind of saying a whole lot there. But it's been like that way the whole season. So I don't know what else to say about this Chargers defense. Obviously, Justin Herbert, he's another good young quarterback, but we've seen in this games, even he makes mistakes as good as in historical as Justin Herbert's been in his first 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, if you had Burkhead, if you somehow decided, oh, let me start him, I mean, he probably was a league winner for last week anyways, because he definitely put up over 25 fantasy points.
Yeah, he unfortunately I was on the wrong end of that. I didn't start him in Scott Fishbowl, but looking back at the standings, I still would only got 2nd place and still want to advance to the finals in that league. But I was lucky enough to grab him on Super Draft with a 1.9x multiplier. So that definitely paid off.
Wow, that definitely pays off for sure. And then let's go on to the AFC. I mean, we're sticking around with the AFC, and let's go with the AFC East. I mean, it's coming down to the wire, and it's very tight. Bills officially control the AFC East 9-6, Patriots 9-6, and don't forget about those Dolphins who started 1-7 and has won 7 straight and is now 8-7, one game behind Pats and Bills. What do you think of that?
It's kind of crazy when you think about it because they're the only team in history that have lost 7 straight games, then won 7 straight games. You got to take it with a little bit of grain of salt too, just because the teams they've beaten are not good teams by any means. They only beat, I think it's one team with a winning record in that time period too. So they're winning the games they're supposed to win essentially at the end of the day. Besides that Ravens game they upset on Thursday night, but their defense is playing a lot better. I think they're finally figured out how their pieces on this team work together on defense. You know, last year they really had that Kyle Van Noy was that leader of the defense and they just let him go. And I never quite understood that one, but now they're figuring out how to put some of these young players in place. Javon Holland's been playing very good and he's like the perfect fit for their defense because at Oregon, he played a little bit of slot. He played a little bit of corner. He played a little bit of safety. So they can just kind of move him around wherever. Just they have a lot of the moving pieces and they're finally starting to figure it out. And Raekwon Davis, when he did come back too, you saw a big difference in their defensive line overall too, because they were struggling to stop the run early in the year. And then, you know, you get that big mammoth of a man, like 6'6", 330 pounds back, and he makes a big difference.
I mean, what a big difference. I mean, who would have thought that the Dolphins would be sitting at 8-7 after starting the season 1-7? But their last 2 games are going to be tough. They're facing the Titans and they're facing the Patriots. And I mean, it's going to be interesting because if the Dolphins were to win out, and I think the Patriots lose at least one game, the Dolphins would sit above them. And I think the Bills would have to lose at least one more also. So I don't know. These Dolphins still have a chance currently to win the AFC East. And the fact we're sitting at week 16 saying that, I mean, that's crazy. Or week 17 anyways. But right now, looking at the playoff picture, the only team in the AFC East who has clinched a playoff spot is the Chiefs. And then for the NFC, it's the Packers, Cowboys, Rams, Bucks, and Cardinals. All teams you would have already expected to clinch by now. But there's a couple that are on the bubble. I mean, for the AFC, you got the Chargers who are officially in the hunt, and then you got the Dolphins who snuck into the 7th seed. Just saying, but you got the Chargers, the Raiders, the Ravens, and the Steelers. You could also mention the Browns and Broncos, but looking at 7 and 8, it's going to be kind of hard for them to push back into that playoff scenario. Any of those teams in mind that I just mentioned, any of them stick out that you think has a chance to sneak into that 4, 5, 6, 7 seed? Any of those?
I mean, you gotta talk about the Raiders just a little bit because they're like this weird team. They don't always win pretty, but when they win, they win. And they're one of those teams. It seems like every year they kind of start out kind of hot, then kind of fall off. The Cardinals are the exact same way too. But I think that comes down to a lot to Cliff Kingsbury, but that's a whole nother story for a different day.
Literally. Earlier in the season, Keith understands it. I'm not a big Raiders fan, but I'm a big Raiders believer this season. And I really thought the Raiders were going to go a long way. They started the season really well. Then, like you were saying, it's just up and down with them. They either somehow manage to win the games or they somehow manage to lose the games. But sitting at 8-7, this team really has a strong chance to go above the Chargers. And depending on the Dolphins' last 2 games, they could sneak into that last playoff spot. So
yeah,
something to keep in mind for them.
Yeah, I don't remember who their last 2 games are off the top of my head either, but they're one of those. Their biggest thing is if they had like an offensive line, their offense would be so much better. But their offensive line's not very good at all. Besides like Colton Miller, like he's fine, but the rest of it, no.
They need Darren Waller to come back.
Yeah, that's a big part too.
But their last 2 games, they will travel to Indianapolis to face the Red Hot Colts. And then you go on to week 18 to face the Los Angeles Chargers, a big playoff spot match that could be in place. Yeah. And then lastly, before we start the quarterback, we were at quarterbacks, is the NFC on the bubble, the Vikings, Falcons, Saints, Washington. They're 7-8, 7-8, 7-8, and 6-9 for Washington, who just absolutely got obliterated by the Cowboys. I mean, Cowboys scored 42 points in one half. That's tied for the most in the first half ever in history. Any of those like kind of give your attention, or do you think none of them will actually sneak into the playoffs?
See, I don't think any of those actually end up getting in,
Okay, because
honestly.
you get the 49ers 8-7 and Eagles 8-7, or the two last remaining
Mm.
spots.
Yeah. Now, if you ask me if the Eagles are like on the outside looking in, I'd probably put them in, but they should win again this weekend against Washington. And then it just kind of comes down to that Dallas game. So is Dallas going to be playing for anything at that point in time? If they're
Yeah,
playing for the
because
number one seed, that's a whole other thing. But then you have that whole big rivalry there regardless anyways. They don't like each other. And this Eagles team, as bad as they were to start the year and as bad as their identity was, Nick Sirianni not running the ball at all, like to start the year, they really flipped the switch and everything's kind of working now. Their defense has kind of been starting to play a little bit better too as well. They've learned what their strengths are. They're still giving up a ton of completions, but bend but don't break defense overall. So plus just relying on that running game. Obviously, Miles Sanders did break his hand, so we'll see what happens with that too. But it's been a really interesting year, and I've kind of enjoyed seeing Jordan Howard kind of come back to life. He looked really good in the preseason, I'll say that too. So I was kind of
he
surprised
did.
when he didn't make the roster. I was kind of surprised, and I was kind of surprised nobody else poached him up either. But if you go back to last year when he was with the Dolphins, he said he kind of came in, he didn't feel right. He's a little bit heavier than he used to be, and it really showed on the field. And this is a guy that's been productive at the NFL level. And it's kind of funny, like when you look back now that like everybody was hyping up Kenny Gainwell at the beginning of the year, now he's playing like 2 snaps a game.
I know he started out like he broke out one week, and then everyone was like, "Oh, this is the man, this is the man, this is the running back." But then all of a sudden,
Yep.
you don't want to leave out Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, because now they just come in and, like you said, Gainwell's only getting like 2 snaps a game now. So
Yeah, well, and even this week after Sanders went down, Boston Scott was the one that kind of filled in more than because the week before, 2 weeks ago, Boston Scott only played special teams,
yep.
and Gainwell I think had like 8% of snaps, and then Gainwell still only had like 3% of snaps this week, and then Boston Scott jumped up the next one. So they don't really trust Kenny Gainwell for whatever reason. When you look at the dude, he looks like he's 190 pounds. Like he's just tiny. Like
Yeah,
I know
he's
I know he
short.
was 201. I know he was 201, 202 at his pro day supposedly, but dude looks like he's 190 pounds right now.
He's definitely he's definitely a character, from what we could say.
Mm.
But then now let's go on to our waiver wire quarterbacks of the week, and we'll start with you, Craig. Who's your first guy? Let's talk about your first guy. It might be one of the guys that I may love.
Yeah, so typically when I do waivers, I do 50% or less in ESPN and Yahoo leagues. So this week when I was looking at ESPN, there's not a lot of guys out there that I feel comfortable streaming this week. The first name I put down was just Mac Jones because he's going against Jacksonville. He didn't have the best game against the Bills, kind of looking for a bounce back game here too. I don't think Mac Jones is going to have back-to-back bad games in general. So I'm pretty comfortable with him against Jacksonville. We just seen, God, who they play?
The Bills. Oh, Jacksonville.
No,
The
Jacksonville.
Jets.
The Jets, yeah. Like we've seen Zach Wilson have an okay game against him against Jacksonville too. Jacksonville's a weird team right now. And that was, they lost to a Jets team that either half their starters are on COVID or IR. Like, and the Jets aren't that good, and the Jets still won that game. And Zach Wilson, for those people that don't really know me, I'm a big fan of Zach Wilson. He had the longest run by a quarterback in Jets history, so dude's got wheels. Don't be surprised.
Dude does have wheels. Did you see that 52-yard run? That was amazing.
Yeah. Well, and even they said at his pro day too, he would have ran in the 4.5s but his hamstring was just like a little tight or something, so he didn't end up running.
Interesting. That would have been interesting to see what his 40-yard dash would have been. But Mac Attack is definitely one of my boys that I've been enjoying to watch this season as a Patriots fan anyways. But Mac Jones, I don't see him as a fantasy quarterback, and that's the problem. Currently this season, he's had his up games, he's had his down games. I mean, you're going against Jacksonville, and that's the only scary part. Is he going to be able to score 20 points against one of the worst defenses in the league? Will he be able to do it? I would hope so. Is he going to with his receivers? He doesn't have the greatest receivers. He has reliable receivers, but he doesn't have the greatest ones. That's the problem with Mac and Jones. I've had him many times this year as one of my waiver wire quarterbacks, and I just don't know whether I can trust him in fantasy currently.
Yeah, he's kind of like that guy. It really just depends on the roster construct of your team, just
Mhm.
because like he's kind of like what we thought of Kirk Cousins like in past years, where
Yeah.
he's not gonna kill you, but he's probably not gonna like put your team over the edge either. But now, like, hopefully he takes that next step up and he becomes Kirk Cousins. And now,
I know Kirk Cousins I had as a waiver wire quarterback, and I've been saying for weeks, and then finally he was over 70% owned.
yeah,
And he's like QB8, I think, right now.
yeah, people just hate him, like for whatever reason. Is it, it's you like that and the full
Yeah.
unvaccinated stance, and if I die, I die, and all that stuff. He's a character, but he like people need to give him some respect at some point in time. And then there was all the primetime losses that he
Hmm.
had. Now he keeps winning primetime games now, though.
Yeah, he's doing good this season. I mean, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne. I mean, you have those receivers there.
It
So
also helps the Vikings defense is terrible. Like the word like that's gonna inflate his stats too. But like we've seen
yeah.
that with guys before, whether it's Matt Ryan or somebody else like that. But a big underestimated part of Kirk Cousins this year is he's actually been able to navigate the pocket and get outside the pocket a little bit
Mhm.
more than he has in past years. And people don't like realize that. Like, yeah, he's only gonna rush for probably 8 yards a game, but he's still making more plays outside of outside of the conscript of the initial play at least. And their offensive line's not very good either. So
100%. Like I totally agree with that. I mean, Kirk Cousins really has been doing good this season, and he could be a reliable quarterback moving forward too.
yep.
So, I'll go with one of my guys, and that's a guy who really was a quarterback last season that did phenomenal. I mean, he was a great QB last year for fantasy, but he's currently sitting at the QB 13, 57.9% owned. Ryan Tannehill. He's facing Miami this week, who technically is the seventh ranked defense in rushing yards per game. But if that means that they're going to stop the run, then that means he's going to have to pass. And we know that Tennessee is a run first offense. And if they can stop the run, they're going to have to force Tannehill to throw the ball. And we saw him and AJ Brown really connect last week. And I think that this week will be a great week to start Ryan Tannehill if you really need to. Because if you really need to start a quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, out of these quarterbacks that we'll mention, is probably the best option, in my opinion.
See, I have a lot of concerns with him too, just because their offensive line has been really struggling pass protection this year. Miami sends blitzes more often than anyone. Ryan Tannehill's is like bottom 3 in the league and holding on to the ball. Like, and it's stuff that he did when he was with the Dolphins too. So the way you beat the Dolphins typically is through the slot wide receiver, getting the ball out quick. And they don't really have that guy in Tennessee. That's my one concern. Maybe they use AJ Brown a little bit more in the slot, try to get a mismatch there, because I don't think most of the time Xavier Howard or Byron Jones is going to follow him there, just
No.
based on the way Miami usually plays. But there is a chance it could happen. But if they put Julio Jones or AJ Brown in the slot, trying to create a mismatch there, they have to do something a little bit more unique, because they're a very predictable team at this point in time. And missing Derrick Henry really killed the play action game, which their offense was predicated on. Obviously AJ Brown can make any corner look foolish on pretty much every given week, but it's a tough matchup for Ryan Tannehill. I think a lot tougher than people make it out to be, I guess. And like like for like when going back to last year, we were like, oh, Ryan Tannehill, like we can't play Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill's not that good. And
Yeah.
now I think we're kind of like overcorrecting, or we're thinking back to what Ryan Tannehill's been the last year and a half, and not realizing what this team is right now either. So like there's guys I would put. There's guys that play ahead of him. There's guys that I would rather have Ryan Tannehill than. It just depends on what you have available to you at that point in time.
So here's my question to you then. Are you starting Ryan Tannehill or Mac Jones?
Uh, I hope I'm not in this situation.
I know. I really hope you're not either, but
Yeah, I'll probably go with the next guy we'll talk about then in that case, I guess, if he ends up playing. And I think there's maybe it just like if Lamar doesn't play this week for Baltimore and Tyler Huntley's back, maybe I look at Tyler Huntley instead. I'm a big Josh Johnson guy too, so I always root for that guy. It's a shame that he's never gotten a real chance in the NFL, even though he's been on like half the teams. But the kid can play. The dude can. I can't even call him a kid because he's older than me. He's like 30, 33, 34 now, I think, off the top of my head. But he's played
you
on
can
every
play.
team. And the worst part is when they had that Thursday night football game and he came in. I don't know if you watched that one at all. They had like Joe Buck and Troy Aikman there. And
I think that
I think Joe Buck
yeah, that was the one you just
Joe
kept.
Buck tried to call him a pocket passer. I'm like, what?
And then he just kept scrambling.
And I'm like, the dude ran like a 4.5 at his combine, like, how, 12 years ago, but dude can still run. Like, he's not a pocket passer.
No, not at all. I mean, all three of those quarterbacks on that team, none of them are pocket passers. They're all scramblers. They could all scramble out of the pocket. I mean, Josh Johnson, 34 years old, 33 years old. This man can still run, like you said. I mean, I was in it was a keeper league in mine, and I lost Jared Goff and I lost Lamar Jackson. The next available guy that was the only super flex available guy there was Josh Johnson, and I took the chance on him because the man can run. He's got the running upside, and every time he's played, he's been kind of playing with 20 plus points a game.
Yeah, at least this year. But even I don't know. I watched a lot of the XFL too, and he was just insane in the XFL. Like he would have won the MVP if he missed like the first 2 or 3 games. So PJ Walker ended up winning it, but
yeah.
Like he was averaging more yards per game, more touchdowns per game, and everything too. Probably with lesser wide receivers, even.
He's definitely a quarterback that just has not had that opportunity, unfortunately.
I was kind of hoping the XFL would stick around. They just pay him like a bunch of money to stay there and kind of like be the face of the league too, because like at that point it's like, do you want to bounce around the NFL for another 5 years, or do you want to go play in a league where you can kind of be like the superstar?
So if you're Baltimore and say Lamar Jackson is out this week as well, are you starting Tyler Huntley, or are you starting Josh Johnson?
I think if Huntley's healthy, they'll start him just because he's been in this offense for 2 years and he's played well too. So who the heck are they playing this week again? I think I have it written down somewhere.
Forget. I know they have. Who do they?
They play the Rams this week. So
yikes! It's gonna be a tough matchup.
So it's kind of the debate. Do you want the guy that's a little bit more mobile in Tyler Huntley, or do you want the guy that's got more experience and maybe can do more stuff pre-snap in Josh Johnson, even though he's not as comfortable in this offense because he's only been around like 2.5 weeks?
So you're picking up Tyler Huntley in waiver wire then, if Lamar Jackson's out?
If Lamar Jackson's out, I will. Like if I need a quarterback, if I'm like a super flex league, or well, in super flex he's probably already owned, but like I think there's definitely the upside there.
Okay. And then we'll go to my last guy, and that's a guy that we both kind of have a similar idea on, and that's Trey Lance. Jimmy G got injured, but he's a guy that can still be playing this week. But I think he should be ruled out. I think they should give him a rest. But yeah, week 17, it's Trey Lance could be his second start of the year. He's facing who's he facing again? I forgot.
My Houston
Texans. I keep forgetting Texans. Sorry, they're kind of ranked 32 in defense. Kind of, they're one of the worst defenses in the NFL. No offense, but they allow the 4th most points per game to their opponents, 26.7 points a game. So I expect this to be a shootout. I think Trey Lance will have to not shootout, but I expect Trey Lance to be passing the ball more than having whoever is the running back in San Francisco now, because everyone's injured, and then either it's Jeff Wilson that's going to be doing it, which he has been doing really good. I will give him credit. Jeff Wilson has been doing good. Yeah, he's definitely been doing good this year. Trey Sermon was supposed to be the guy, and clearly with injuries, it's not him.
It wasn't even injuries. They just watched him play, and they're like, nope, we ain't doing this.
No, literally. I mean, it's crazy. What's your thoughts on Trey Lance?
So I like the rushing upside if he does end up starting. I think this is going to be a low scoring game, honestly, though. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth, just running the ball, trying to make some short passes, not trying to like really blow the game from both teams, because we kind of seen that from the Texans. They haven't taken too many shots with Davis Mills as the quarterback. He had a lot of 5-yard dump offs. Tight ends, running backs, short to wide receivers. Yeah, we did have that one long touchdown, I believe was to Chris Conley last week for 41 yards. He had that one big game against the Patriots, which was just him throwing the ball up to Chris Moore and a guy missing a tackle, but not going to go down that rabbit hole too much here. But otherwise, a lot of dump off passes so far. Like they know he's a rookie quarterback who had 11 career starts in college at Stanford. I'm not a big fan of the guy. I think he's probably just a backup quarterback in the league regardless, but they're running a very simplistic offense to try to just make things as easy as possible at this point in time. And I think we kind of talked about before the show, that's kind of what San Francisco did with Trey Lance last time out. They didn't use a lot of motion. Everything was real basic. So you like to see them get maybe a little bit more creative. Maybe now that they have some more time in the playbook, they know if Jimmy's going to be out, maybe they have a full week to kind of plan around it. But I don't know at this point in time. I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy plays either. We've seen quarterbacks with similar injuries like this, most notably Gardner Minshew last year, try to play a couple weeks with it. It's very difficult though, because I think it's like a thumb fracture and then the ligament as well. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much what Gardner had last year. If you go back to Brett Favre played like half a year with a broken thumb, but he probably had the ligament torn too. But back in the day, we didn't have that information.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's kind of interesting at this point in time. Does Jimmy want to like not play and then potentially just lose his job, kind of like Alex Smith did with Colin Kaepernick on the same team when he got his concussion? Then Kaepernick just kind of took over. Similar situation, similar type of thing too.
And we talked before the show. If Jimmy G brings them far in the playoffs, is Jimmy G the starting quarterback next season?
Well, and I just want this to be like as chaotic as possible. So I want him to win the Super Bowl with Jimmy G just to see like what happens, like to see this whole thing kind of like blow up in their face, or because they're going to move on from Jimmy, I believe either way. Like you invested all that capital in Trey Lance. So obviously you're betting on this kid. Not sure, like, I don't have a problem with Trey Lance, but I'm not sure whether or not that's going to work out either. Because, he really only had 14 career starts in college. He played at the FCS level. He played one game last year. And he's not much. He has the big arm. He's a great runner. He has very, very good vision when he's running the ball. So I hope that translates over to playing quarterback and seeing the field when he does that. There's a lot of question marks there. They're going to kind of probably change up the offense just a little bit when he does eventually become the starter. So I think they move on from Jimmy. I think they can get, a decent draft pick from him because he's played reasonably well this year. There's going to be some teams that are quarterback needy, depending on who you listen to, not the best quarterback draft overall. I think there's some guys that have potential, but it's going to be very landing spot dependent as well.
Yeah. So it'll definitely be an interesting spot next season with Jimmy G and Trey Lance battling it out as quarterbacks. But that's going to do it for our waiver wire quarterbacks. Ryan Tannehill, Trey Lance are my two guys, and Mac Jones and Tyler Huntley / Trey Lance for Craig too. Craig does enjoy his Trey Lance a little bit this week. Let's go on to our running backs, and we'll start again with you, Craig. Who's one of your top guys?
Well, the ones that I got, I wouldn't even call like my top guys, but I think they're ones that are worth mentioning at this point in time. So I'll start off with Keyshawn Vaughn. He does go against the Jets this week. We've seen him have that long touchdown run. There's been some hype around the guy for a little while. Bruce Arians supposedly likes him because he always talks about him, but I don't trust anything that comes out of Bruce Arians' mouth ever at this point in time.
He benched the guy too at one point.
Well, and then but we got Ronald Jones. He could get benched at any point in time. We have this thing called COVID going around. So honestly, if I have a running back I'm counting on and I can make it happen, I'm, championship week, you don't need all these random guys on your bench that aren't going to help you this week. So you might as well get the backup to your main running back that you're counting on, or the two running backs you're counting on. You might as well have a second quarterback just in case something happens this week. That's the way I would approach it, at least like this week, this season, just because we don't know what's going to happen with COVID on any given day. Like, this is a big thing, especially like I do NBA DFS a lot. And it's just like every day there's somebody like, oh, this guy's ruled out now. Now this guy's ruled out now too.
Exactly.
NFL, we did see a big boom because they started testing the vaccinated players more often. Before, it was only every 2 weeks or if you were showing symptoms. And then the unvaccinated guys are kind of like, well, that's not fair. And then we had that big boom. What was it? Probably 2 weeks ago now, where they had the most guys tested in one single day. It was 96 or something, but it's because they started testing people more often. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of like, you have to be prepared for that. And you rather have that guy on your roster right now than scrambling on Saturday to get him, or Sunday.
And you mentioned NBA, and I just want to quickly add into the NBA, Nets, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and LaMarcus Aldridge have cleared health and safety protocols. So that's going to be interesting for DFS people.
Durant finally did now.
Yeah.
I know they were talking about he might for the next game, they don't play tonight. They play tomorrow, I think. So yeah,
it just came out or just a couple minutes ago. But yeah, no, Keyshawn Vaughn is a great pickup. I think he's a reliable back. I think he's just stashed in depth with the Buccaneers' elite offense. So having Keyshawn Vaughn there behind Ronald Jones is really helpful. And like you mentioned, that whatsoever thing, COVID, yeah, that thing has been a really killer in fantasy lineups this year, especially last week. A lot of COVID people were out, big names, Austin Eckler. So having a backup running back could really help you because it could be the next Alexander Madison guy. I mean, he's elite. Man can definitely play when he is starting. But Keyshawn Vaughn flashed last week, 7 attempts, 70 yards, 1 touchdown. And don't forget, Fournette's only on 1 year deal, so it could be Keyshawn Vaughn's show next season.
And Ronald Jones is also on a 1 year. He's on the last year of his rookie deal too. So if if you can show out and sure you can do some, but then we say all this and it's probably going to just be like Le'Veon Bell popping out of
Yeah,
nowhere.
I know.
Has like 2 touchdowns.
Oh man,
He only played like 3. He only played the 3 garbage time snaps last week though.
It would stink if Bell just comes out of nowhere and just decides to do that, and that would be something he would do too. But yeah, no, I do like that Keyshawn Vaughn pick. But we'll go on to the AFC, last year's AFC Super Bowl possible almost winner. And that was the Chiefs. Chiefs running back Darrell Williams, 60.3% owned. He's a running back 22 right now. And that's because Clyde Edwards-Helaire has had injuries this season and he's facing another one this week. And he's currently week to week. I'm going to be completely honest. I think Darrell Williams could be a league winner because of that elite offense. He could be easily a top 20 running back this week. And he's facing Cincinnati, which again, I think it's going to be more of a shootout. And I think Darrell Williams, I mean, you saw it last week. Darrell Williams was plowing through the defense. This man was running the ball all over the place. So I really think Darrell Williams can continue to have a show and can continue to thrive in the AFC North.
Yeah, so he's not a guy that I had on my list, but he's definitely a good one to do as well. Initially, like when they first said Clyde Edwards thing, it came out collarbone. So I'm like, oh crap, he's like done. And then like
I thought so too.
Yesterday they're like bruised shoulder. I'm like, oh, that's not that bad. So
yeah, it's totally different.
Maybe he plays through that. I don't know, but Darrell Williams definitely in play, especially because he has that pass catching upside as well. Especially, I don't think Jerick McKinnon's ever coming back this year. I don't even know what his injury was, but he's on IR. I just don't like Jerick McKinnon anyways, as it is. But
nope, injury prone. So, I'd rather take Williams.
Well,
for sure. Yeah. Even if they said McKinnon like comes back and all of a sudden he's a starter.
I ain't even worried about McKinnon if he comes back, but just the fact that he's not there is one less guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. And Derek Gore's not going to catch the ball out of the backfield.
No. Derek Gore had some flashes, but again, the Steelers' defense was not looking too great against them last week.
Steelers' defense can't stop the run, but the Bengals' defense, they're really hit or miss. Like some weeks they're really good, some weeks they're really bad.
That's the thing. It's whether or not, like, that's the thing. Are they going to show up this week or are they not going to show up? And that was my thing. And I really don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be back and forth. So that's why I'm considering this in an elite offense. I'm thinking Darrell Williams will be a guy to be a league winner. I'll actually double up here and I'll go with my second running back. And I know you do like him too. And that's Mr. Penny. And he ain't no regular 1 cent Penny. He's Rashad Penny. And this man had 19.5 points last week. 2 of the last 3, he's had over, I think it was 125 plus rushing yards 2 of the last 3 weeks, 311 total yards, 3 touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's averaging 17.56 points a game. And he's facing Detroit this week. Come on, Detroit. This is just a perfect matchup for Rashad Penny. And along with Darrell Williams, I think if you really need running backs, these 2 could really be league winners.
Yeah. So I am like the
You're
Rashad
iffy
Penny.
On it. You're iffy on it.
I'm the Rashad. I'm like literally a Rashad Penny hater. I'm like, I have like a hashtag I always use that just says never Penny. But like Detroit matchup is really good. But watch this be like the game he gets hurt again. So like
that's the problem. That whole Seattle offense just gets hurt. The running backs, Chris Carson, Rashad Penny. I mean, but I'm hoping Penny doesn't get hurt this time.
Yeah, I mean, I picked him up in Scott Fishbowl. I probably should have played him last week too, and he didn't do it. Or he obviously I didn't play him, and then I played Darrell Henderson instead, and then he got hurt like 4 plays in the game.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
so even though you're a hashtag Penny hater,
He's a top 24 running back this week, especially
Top
against the
24?
Lions.
So
Yeah.
you're giving him a little RB2 flex play type
Yeah,
or
he's fine.
RB3 flex
Like if
play?
you want to use him as RB2, I don't have a problem with it this week.
Okay. So if you had injuries, maybe like say Dalvin Cook doesn't play and maybe
Mhm.
Joe Mixon gets injured again, are you starting Williams and Penny or are you looking for better options?
If that's what I got to start, I got to start. Like, I mean, if you don't like at this point, you either have the options or you don't. Like,
That's true.
so,
Uh,
I mean, don't put that on Joe Mixon though.
listen, Joe Mixon gets hurt. I'm not a big Mixon or Dalvin Cook guy, so that's my
Uh,
thing.
See, I've always been a big Mixon guy, and people are like, "Oh, he gets hurt and stuff." Like, yeah, he gets banged up, but he never like outside of the foot injury, he's never like missed an extended period of time. And that was just them last year being like, "We suck." Joe Burrow just got hurt, but they just didn't put him on IR. Is stupid. Like,
No, it really is. Who's your last guy? Let's book this last guy.
yeah. So book Devontae Booker. So um, I don't. So last week we saw Saquon Barkley and Devontae Booker. Devontae Booker played like 2/3 of the snap. Saquon only played like 1/3 of the snaps last week. We've seen them already be like, we ain't gonna use Daniel Jones. We're gonna shut him down for the season. Shut down Saquon Barkley while you're at it. Like, there's no reason to play him at this point in time. You're not playing for anything besides your pride, I guess. I don't know. Booker's been really good when he's actually played too. Like he's been way more efficient than Saquon Barkley. Even when Barkley was out, he was putting up good weeks too. Like this is a guy that if he ends up just being the starter and Barkley's not there, hey, Devontae Booker could be, that top 20 running back once again.
Booker really shows, and I mean, we saw last year with Saquon Barkley. When Gallman came in, he stepped up. Booker also. I mean, both these running backs. Who are you rather starting? I'm going to be completely honest. I'd rather start Booker over Saquon. Booker really has been doing better, like you've been saying, than Saquon. And Saquon is not himself anymore. He is not an RB1 anymore. And he should definitely not be drafted next year in the top 10, top 12, even maybe top 25. I mean, he should not be in the top 25 for next year's draft. And Devontae Booker is the guy there. In my opinion, I think he should be the guy.
Yeah. So, and I think too with Saquon, like we talked about a little bit before the show, I'm like, I don't think there's any way you can extend this guy at this point in time. Like the money that
Maybe a
he's gonna
cheap deal.
want, like he's not gonna take a cheap deal though either. He'd rather take like a 1-year deal somewhere to prove it. I feel like like just be like on a slightly better team that has an offensive line or something. I just I don't know, unless he just gets like a Le'Veon Bell deal where he's just like, okay, I'll be on a crappy team for a bunch of money or something like that. But hey, like at the same time, they should have never taken him second overall. Like that's a whole nother story. Wayne Gallman just had like an 800-yard rookie year where he wasn't even the starter at the beginning of the year, and then they're just like, oh, screw this guy, we'll take Saquon instead. And it's like you could have had God,
Like,
who's the
give
quarterback?
these people chances. Eli Manning, Daniel Jones.
Well, no, who was the quarterback in that draft? They could have had somebody else. They could draft a Quentin Nelson. Like,
They had so many options and they decided to go for Barkley, which, mind you, they had a good Barkley pre-injuries, but ever since his injuries, he's obviously not the same, and that's kind of what we're seeing Christian McCaffrey too this season.
yeah. Well, even with Barkley, like even when he was playing well, they weren't winning. So it's not like he was like running back so replaceable nowadays too. Like we see it all the time.
Yeah, it's very true. But that's going to do it for our running backs. I mean, Darrell Williams, Rashad Penny are my two guys. Keyshawn Vaughn and Devontae Booker. Book all four of these guys because all these guys are definitely waiver wire pickups for the week. And then let's go on to our wide receivers and let's double up here, Craig, for you. We'll double up with your two guys.
So I'll start off with Isaiah McKenzie. Obviously, he had a crazy, crazy game last week, but Cole Beasley obviously tested positive for COVID. The whole world knows he's not vaccinated. So he's out at least 10 days, which I don't remember exactly what day he tested positive last week, but he'll be pushing close to this week if he plays or not. And even if he does play, maybe he's limited, maybe he has symptoms, side effects, anything else like that. Probably didn't practice all week. I just kind of hope he doesn't play, honestly. But Isaiah McKenzie stepped into that role. They play Atlanta Falcons this week. The Falcons defense is not good by any means. We already know the Bills aren't going to run the ball. It's not in their plans.
Not at
They're
all.
going to throw the ball, and the slot corner for the Falcons has been a mixture of a safety and rookie cornerback Darren Hall. So going to be another good matchup overall. He's literally rostered like less than 1% of leagues too. So you might as well pick him up, throw him on the end of your bench. If Cole Beasley doesn't play, just roll him out there. Pretty simple, especially in PPR leagues. Like we saw the dude get 11 catches last week.
Now, what about Gabe Davis? What if he plays?
See, I don't know. I'm not as worried about Gabe Davis because like he'll probably just, I don't know, because they used him in the slot a little bit early this year, but like then they got away from it.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple weeks though, he was putting up big numbers.
Mm.
But the only worry that gives me if Gabe Davis starts is, does Gabe Davis take away the potential that Isaiah McKenzie just had last week?
See, my thing is Davis and Sanders, they're the ones button heads because they're like fighting for that same playing time and everything too. McKenzie's, they kind of prepped him to be that understudy to Cole Beasley. Like they're probably going to move on from Cole Beasley after this year, and it's going to be McKenzie. And I think they took him off all kick return and punt return duties now too, because they got Marquise Stevenson back now, who I like quite a bit, Speedy Stevenson, but that dude is crazy. Fast. Like he's crazy. If you watch the combine that Brandon Marshall did last year, he screwed up his 40 time. All 3 times he ran it and still ran 4.48 or better all 3 times. Like that's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Like nobody should be able to do that
3 times in a row too.
Like he one time he like stumbled a little bit. One time he came like up too fast. Like he just didn't have good form, but like he still had 4.48 or better like every time. It was just ridiculous. But McKenzie definitely somebody I'm interested in. Then I think the other one I was going to do is Kadarius Toney, who goes against the Bears. The Bears secondary has been killed by COVID and a lot of other things too. Kadarius Toney, he came back last week, played a bunch in the slot. The Bears slot corners have not been very good this year. I haven't looked into too much if Duke Shelley did return last week, who's been their best slot corner, but still not the greatest. I didn't look into the stats too much to see if he played slaughter on the outside though last week, but Kadarius Toney, we've seen him have those big flashes earlier this season. If you're in a league, especially that's a week 18 championship for some reason, Kadarius Toney would definitely be somebody looking at too as well. This Giants team, they don't have a lot going on right now, so they might just try to feed this young kid the ball and see what happens.
I like Isaiah McKenzie. I think he definitely has potential. But Kadarius Toney is definitely a guy that I'm nervous on. I think I'd rather pump the brakes a little on him, at least this season. I mean, I'd rather not take my chances in the championship with a guy who really has not put up big numbers. I mean, yes, you've seen him put up 11 points. Yes, you've seen him put up that one big game against Dallas where he scored 29.6 points. But he's more of a boom or bust guy to me. So if you want that boom against that deflated secondary, basically, you could say, I mean, you could definitely take a chance if you really need it. But I'd rather, I don't know, I'd rather take other options. But if he's really your only option, then definitely go for him.
Yeah, it's more in like if you have like a 3 wide receiver flex league or like a 2 flex league or something like that. It's just like, look at what the Giants have to work with at this point in time. They're going to be throwing quick, short passes. Kenny Galladay can't separate. Darius Slayton can't catch the ball. So it's like, you might as well just throw it together. You know, can actually do something at this point in time.
Throw it to the rookie. Yeah. Throw it to the rookie. Give him
the ball, potential. See what he can do.
Exactly.
Like, we ain't got nothing else going on right now.
Yeah. Win it for pride, like you said. Go win. Go get some pride games.
Or get Matt Nagy fired. One or the other.
Yeah, one or the other. I mean, we thought Matt Nagy was already going to be fired before the end of the season, but clearly it looks like he's going to have his job for the rest of the season.
Well, Bears have never fired a coach in the middle of a season, so at least he's got that going for him.
At least he won't be on the list of coaches fired in mid-season.
Yeah, but supposedly there's like some other report that came out. Was it yesterday or the day before? And they're like,
I think it was yesterday.
Maybe he coaches the last 2 games.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, they're definitely going to just coach him for the last 2. Why are you going to change it up the last 2 games?
As long as they don't pull like a Jacksonville where they had Doug Marrone the one year and Sean Conn literally walks down to him before the last game. He says, "Yeah, you're gone after this game." Then they end up winning. Like they either won the game or played really well, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll give you like 1 more year."
That was the worst mistake. Yep. Worst mistake.
Yeah.
Doug Marrone is not a good. My second favorite team is Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Jaguars just don't look good. And I'm so glad Urban Meyer's gone.
He was good at one thing. Doug Marrone was really good at one thing. You know what it is?
Defense?
No, challenges. He had the The time he was a head coach, he had like the highest converted challenge percentage. It was like over 60%.
There was a
It's
couple
like the
times.
only thing he had.
Yeah, there was a couple times I saw him throw the challenge flag, and I mean, he does have good challenge flag challenges.
Or he had somebody good working upstairs to tell him what to do. One or the other.
He's
Somebody should.
he's got someone watching those cameras.
Yeah.
But I'll go with my guy, my two guys, anyways. And you're a little iffy on this guy, I think, and that's Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he's 61.8% owned. But last week he had 11 targets, 9 receptions, 91 yards for a touchdown. He's averaging 22.4 points a game in the last 4 games, and he's had 11 plus targets in the last 4 games. And he goes against Seattle this week, who Seattle we've seen is just not the Seattle team that we've known in previous years. First time in a while they've had double-digit losses. It'd be surprised if they were to stop feeding the ball this week, because Amon-Ra St. Brown just really has been blowing up the last 4 weeks, and he's a wide receiver 25, and he could be another league winner if needed.
Yeah. So I actually do like Amon-Ra St. Brown. My comments was just I don't think he's available in most leagues. They're having a championship this week, and he's over that 50% for me. So like he hasn't made my list in I think 2 weeks now. I want to say off the top of my head, but he's been playing very well. And even last week he did it with Tim Boyle, who should never be in the NFL, shouldn't he? like if you've seen that guy's college stats, you're like, how the heck is this guy even in the NFL?
How is he starting?
Right? Like. And the worst part is they have David Blau. They started a couple games a couple years ago, and he didn't look half bad. I'm like, you're starting this guy over this guy?
That was the year that I needed a quarterback to start, and I ended up starting David Blau. And hey, he didn't do that bad.
He was the worst, or he was the best quarterback that Rondell Moore had at Purdue was David Blau. The other guys were bad,
But yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown is 61.8% owned. So again, it's more on if you really need a big boom type of guy. And again, he's 61.8% owned, so he's not available in not that many leagues. Yeah, most leagues. But another guy that is also not really that available is he's 68.5% owned. So he's right on the cusp of the 70% owned that I do. And that's Tyler Boyd. I mean, he's a wide receiver 29, and he put up monster games the last couple of weeks. I mean, 5 targets, 3 receptions, 85 yards, a touchdown last week. I mean, anyone who, if you start any Cincinnati player, like we were saying earlier, I mean, you probably won, because like if you start all of them, you probably won. You could have won with all Cincinnati players. I mean, last 2 games, he found the end zone, 20.6 last 2 weeks ago, 17.5 last week. Facing Kansas City this week, and I've already mentioned that I expect them to be both teams to have a shootout. So I wouldn't be surprised if Boyd at a floor gives you 13 to 15 points this week.
So I will say about Tyler Boyd too, the last 2 games he's had a very long touchdown in too. So that kind of makes his numbers look a little bit better than they probably are. He has a tough matchup against L'Jarius Sneed in the slot for Kansas City too as well. You know, I just want to say a shout out to him too, or like not even a shout out, but just kind of thoughts and prayers go out to him. He missed 2 games back to back because his brother just passed away too. So thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family. But it's a very tough matchup. Probably gonna. I'm trying to remember who lines up on the side that doesn't go against Chark Ward, because whoever that is, who's going to be, who has the big week for the Bengals. I wouldn't even be surprised if CJ Uzomah gets the big week this week, because Kansas City hasn't been the greatest against the tight ends this year. They've gotten better though. Willie Gay playing a little bit more has helped, even though he's incredibly athletic, but he has no coverage instincts.
No, not at all. I, in my opinion, if I had to pick between Amon-Ra St. Brown and Tyler Boyd, I'm actually picking Amon-Ra St. Brown, because he's had a 4-game streak right now, and he's definitely hotter than Boyd in the last couple of weeks. So I'd rather go with Boyd for sure. We actually have a question from Karina. Are you starting weekly defensive question? First off, starting Cowboys versus Arizona or the Bucks versus the Jets? Cowboys are number 1 defense currently, but I don't think I'd want to start them against Arizona. Although Arizona has been struggling lately, I'd rather take my chances on the Cowboys because of Micah Parsons and Trevon Diggs. They've both been just absolutely elite this season. And then you got other big names on that team, on that defense. I'm actually picking the Cowboys on this.
Yeah, this is a tough one, because Like the Buccaneers are playing the Jets, should be a good matchup there. The Jets have been really banged up by COVID too. They started like half a backup offensive line against Jacksonville, but at the same time, you on Tampa Bay side, you have Jason Pierre-Paul did not play last time out. Not sure exactly what his injury is off the top of my head. And then Shaq Barrett just, I think they say he sprained his ACL and his MCL. So he's not going to play probably for a couple of weeks, probably not until they get to the playoffs at least. So that edge rush might not be quite as good as it was. I think it just depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for kind of that safe play Tampa Bay. If you're looking for some upside from some extra points, then you roll with the Cowboys. Especially, like Arizona, like without DeAndre Hopkins, he's a very good wide receiver, but he makes everybody else so much better because the whole defense shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And now without him out there, everybody's like, oh, well, we should start Christian Kirk because Hopkins isn't there. Well, Christian Kirk doesn't do anything when Hopkins doesn't play. It's been that way for 2 years now. So it's just really difficult in that regard. So I think that could be a big one too. And then if James Conner doesn't play once again, who knew we'd be talking about James Conner as such an impactful role, but
Yeah.
I never really doubted the guy. I picked him up a lot in leagues, a lot of best balls and stuff like that, just because he was so cheap. And it's just even if the guy just gets touchdowns, and he's done way more than that, but if he's able to play, it makes a big difference. If he's not able to play, this offense might not be able to move the ball very well.
No, not at all. And like you said with Hopkins, Hopkins really made that offense look very well along with Kyler Murray. But now with Hopkins not out, you've been seeing Arizona really struggle lately, especially 2 weeks ago when they faced Detroit and they lost to Detroit. So I think we're both on an agreement here with the Cowboys.
And honestly, the only real player they have to throw to that consistently there is Zach Ertz at this point in time. If you put Micah Parsons on him or Keanu O'Neal and just take Zach Ertz away, then
you really have no one.
Then you just hope AJ Green has a good game or Christian Kirk pops off for a play, and then Rondale Moore might not play again with his ankle. So it's just there's all this stuff here, and it's just if Rondale Moore doesn't play, if James Conner doesn't play, you stop Zach Ertz, you probably just win the game.
Yeah, exactly. But that's going to do it for our wide receivers as well. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyler Boyd are my two guys, and Craig's two guys is Isaiah McKenzie and Kadarius Toney. And then let's go on to our last segment, which is the tight ends. And I'll start with Pat Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth has really been up and down this season. Tight end 12. He's averaging 9.5 points a game, and I've been saying all season, maybe you'll agree with me with this one, but really if a tight end scores 10 plus points a game, just with a floor of 10 just is enough for a tight end, because tight ends have been so hard this season. So just getting 10 points, I think, is valuable for a tight end. But he goes on to face Cleveland, where he scored 14.4 points last time they faced. And if he plays, I consider him a top 10 this week.
Yeah, I think he's definitely in play as, top 10, top 12 tight end. He's a little bit touchdown dependent at this point in time too. Cleveland defense, we'll see what they look like this week, whether they got these guys back or not at this point in time, because they still had a lot of COVID issues. They had a couple other guys that are banged up too as well. Could be a little bit tougher matchup, whether or not they put a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on him. Anthony Walker is the most underrated free agent signing in the whole offseason. Yep. That dude. And even if you look at, I don't know, I haven't looked in a couple of weeks, but his PFF grades were off the charts. And even if you look at the Colts defense, they struggled at times this year. They've been missing them too. So I think that's a little bit of a tough matchup for Freiermuth, but if he gets the touchdown, definitely going to be in that top 10 once again. So it's pretty much like most tight ends, it's just touchdown or bust, especially if you're looking at somebody to pick up and kind of stream this week anyways.
Yeah, for sure. I like Freiermuth the most, but definitely Freiermuth is the guy. And I'll also mention Gerald Everett as well. We both like him, and he's also he's unowned in many leagues. He's only 17.4% owned, and he's tight end 22, which is obviously not the greatest, but he scored 10 plus points in the last 5 of the 7 games, or in the 5 of the last 7 games since the bye week. And he's been scoring 10 plus, and he's facing Detroit again. Detroit, we've already talked about, is not that great. So facing Detroit, I really think that Gerald Everett can break out again this week.
So I do like Gerald Everett. I've been talking about him for a couple different weeks now, and his schedule is pretty nice. Detroit was actually doing pretty well against tight ends earlier on in the year, but Alex Alzone, he's on IR now, and he was the guy that was primarily responsible for that. not very good in the run game, but could definitely cover. Kind of looks like Clay Matthews with the long blonde hair.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I still can't believe they brought him in and they've been playing him as their like Mike linebacker all year either. But that's a whole nother story. But he's on IR, so he's their biggest guy that was being used to cover tight ends. So it could be a good matchup for Gerald Everett once again.
Okay, so I think we're on the same page on both Firemouth and Gerald Everett.
Yep.
All right, good. And then we'll end it on your two guys. Who's your two guys?
Yeah, so my two guys are a little bit maybe a deeper. I wouldn't call Gerald Everett deeper, but Cole Kmet versus the Giants. The Giants have not been very good against tight ends, especially with the linebackers they're throwing out there. I know they're playing Jalen Smith 75% of snaps last week, so he's athletic. He's not that great in coverage though. Tate Crowder was Mr. Irrelevant, so that's all you got to know about him. He's been playing all year. He's been great for IDP, but he's not that great of a linebacker in real life. Cole Kmet's 40% roster. Been playing pretty well. He's been getting targets. You know, Allen Robinson, does he end up playing this week? Does he not? He's still been battling with COVID as well. So there's just a lot of options out there. Who ends up playing quarterback for the Bears this week? Is it Justin Fields? Is it Andy Dalton? Is it Nick Foles? Who knows? Maybe you just need Nick Foles anyways. I don't know. Like,
who knows? I do actually like Cole Kmet, but the only problem with him is his touchdown. He's not scored a touchdown this season, and it's because of Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham's been really holding him back, but Jimmy Graham is leaving this season, so it could be Cole Kmet's show next season.
Yeah, he's not one of those guys that you're going to look at and be like, he's going to score a bunch of touchdowns for a tight end either. Maybe turns into Heath Miller later on in his career, but where he kind of starts getting the touchdowns. But it seems like they always want, and it's weird how they constructed their team with these tight ends because Jimmy Graham's real big. Jesse James is tall. They got Jesper Horsted, who's like a big guy too. They kind of use him like Jimmy Graham. They just split him out wide and try to throw a touchdown to him every once in a while. But like they're just these really like big, tall tight ends. And then there's like Cole Kmet, that's kind of your traditional tight end. So I think he's more of a guy just to use this week. If he gets the volume, he's going to be there. If he ever ends up getting a ton of volume, then he could be in play. Maybe kind of like what we saw last year with Logan Thomas, where he wasn't scoring a ton of touchdowns, but the volume kind of compensated for it.
Yeah, easily for sure. And who's your last guy, by the way?
So I put Mo Alley Cox. He's going against the Las Vegas Raiders. Should be a pretty decent matchup overall, depending on who they use at linebacker now, because they keep changing it up. But my boy Divine Diablo has actually been playing there quite a bit, and he was a safety in college, and probably the closest thing we've seen out of Virginia Tech to Cam Chancellor. Size-wise, speed-wise, they were about the same, but they haven't ended up playing up at linebacker now. He's been playing a little bit more. Maybe he's all right in coverage against Mo Alley Cox. Jack Doyle may or may not play this week. He's day-to-day at this point in time. So we've seen Mo Alley Cox do well at times when Jack Doyle's missed. I'm not a big Mo Alley Cox guy myself, but it's a decent matchup. There's some opportunity there. If they end up having to throw the ball, then he could be all right. Not sure how much they're actually going to have to throw the ball against the Raiders defense that has a lot of COVID issues as well.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan on him, but definitely when Jack Doyle doesn't play, he can have that potential to score. But Jack Doyle definitely doesn't look like he might be playing. But I do like Mo Alley Cox if you are in desperate need of a tight end. So, but that's going to do it for our tight ends. Pat Firemouth, Gerald Everett are my two guys, and Craig's two guys is Cole Kmet and Mo Alley Cox. And then we have a couple of questions in the comments. Vaughn is available in my league, and I own Darrell Williams. Who would you recommend as a decent replacement after a tough J-Rob loss? Yeah, unfortunately, hopefully J-Rob ends up coming back next season fully healthy, but definitely a torn Achilles injury might be tough to come back from with any running back. But I really think you should go for Keyshawn Vaughn. I mean, we mentioned him already. Keyshawn Vaughn, Darrell Williams are both two guys that are really great pickups for this week. I'm starting Darrell Williams over Keyshawn Vaughn, though, because Darrell Williams is the starter.
Yeah, I would start Darrell Williams over Keyshawn Vaughn. I think Vaughn's worth picking up, especially if you just have like somebody that's like on your bench that you're probably not going to use anyways. Like, because who knows what happens during this week once I kind of mentioned again. You know, like I mentioned before, like COVID could happen at any point in time. So you might as well have some of these backup running backs that may have a little bit of opportunity. But if the starter is ruled out with COVID, if something happens, because people get hurt in practice too. Like we saw Robert Woods tear his ACL in practice. So like anything could happen on any day. We don't wish that upon anyone, but it's kind of the reality it is, especially with championship week, though, too. You just kind of want to have players that could turn into more value over time, too.
Yeah, for sure. And then her last question is DJ Moore, Jacoby Myers, or Brandon Cooks? And I'm going to have you start with this because Brandon Cooks is your Texans guy.
Brandon Cooks is so frustrating this year.
Yes, he really is.
Because he was really good at the beginning. He was like really good at the beginning of the year. And then he had like a 5-6 week stretch where he like literally did nothing. And then like I benched him the 1 week, then he has like 30 points. And then like I think there's another good week after that too. And then last week he was obviously on COVID. So this one's tough. And I love DJ Moore, but their quarterbacks are crap. Like I have a hashtag just saying get DJ Moore a real QB, and I use it all the time.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Sam Darnold, he's enjoying seeing ghosts. And then you got Cam Newton, who Cam Newton's just Cam Newton. So
they are 0-14 in the last 14 games that Cam Newton has started at quarterback for the Panthers.
That's a good fact. That is a crazy fact. I enjoy that fact. I will say after out of all these guys, I'm going with Jacoby Myers.
So let's see. I'm trying to think. So the Patriots play the Jacksonville. The Carolina Panthers, I don't remember who they put out the top of my head. The Texans play the we already talked about
them. Texans play the
San Francisco.
Arizona. Yeah.
San Francisco, and then who the Panthers play? I don't know.
I'll tell you in 2 seconds. Saints. Yeah.
I guess. So for me, it's probably between Jacoby Myers and Brandon Cooks. I think I probably just lean Brandon Cooks a little bit more. Just he's got the bigger play upside. He might get a touchdown. I love Jacoby Myers. Like so much. It's like I was on him before anybody was on. Like after his rookie year, I drafted him in like the 23rd round of dynasty drafts everywhere because nobody knew who this kid was.
No, I was so on top of him, like in all my leagues, and I even put a poll way back in his rookie season. I said, "Will Jacoby Myers ever be relevant?" And I think out of my like 700-800 votes, most of them were no. No one thought that Jacoby Myers would be relevant, but look at him now. He's a PPR machine.
Yeah, my bold prediction for 2020 was actually that he finished as a top 45 wide receiver when he was like nobody even knew who he was.
Isn't he top 30 something currently?
Well, that's this year, but that was for last year.
Oh,
and then
yeah,
last year he missed. He started off the year with a shoulder thing where he kind of got behind the ball, and then they just didn't play him for a while. And then, like once he started playing, he was like a top 30 wide receiver. But dude's good. Like, and I don't say this lightly, but like I throw around this all the time. I'm like, he's the Dollar Tree, like the Dollar Tree, the generic brand version of Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Like if you watch these two guys, they're about the same size. They're both very good route runners. They both play in the slot. But the biggest knock on them coming out of college was they didn't have a ton of speed.
That's very true. But you see Keenan Allen, he's blowing up. Yeah. Jacoby Myers could be that guy next season, maybe.
There was one route he ran last year where he like double juked and just like the slot corner didn't know what to do. It's like some weird thing. He probably learned it from Edelman, I bet, but because Edelman did this weird stuff. Like if you ever listen to like a cornerback talk about playing Julian Edelman, they're like, his hips say he's moving this way, but he's going the opposite way somehow. It's like it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, I mean, Jacoby Myers is definitely different type of breed with Keenan Allen in comparison, and even Julian Edelman. And then let's finish off this episode with the 2022 breakout players, and I'm going to name two that we've already mentioned, so I won't go into full detail. But for next season, I really think it's Cole Kmet and Keyshawn Vaughn's shows. I think, like you mentioned, Ronald Jones, he's on a 1-year deal, or he's ending his rookie contract, and who knows whether they sign him back. And then Leonard Fournette, same thing. He's on a 1-year deal. He could be gone next season, or the Bucs could just be the Bucs and just take everyone back again. And then as for Cole Kmet, I mean, Jimmy Graham signed 2-year contract 2 years ago. He's now going to be an unrestricted free agent this year, and I think Graham is not coming back next season. I think Cole Kmet will be a top 10 tight end next season.
I was honestly surprised Jimmy didn't retire after that last game where he caught the touchdown in the end zone, just like walked off in the tunnel.
No, honestly, like this man is what, 34, 35? He's
but,
up
I mean,
there.
if you're getting $9 million a year to barely play, you probably play too.
Hey, I'm I'm definitely on his side, though. I would definitely play.
Yeah, so I think mine are a little bit deeper, but one of the ones that I do like is Joshua Palmer for the Chargers. He's
Oh,
obviously been playing more now. He's had big flashes at times. He had tons of flashes at Tennessee. When he went up against the top corners, like in last year's draft, when he was playing against SEC competition, we're talking, we're talking Patrick Surtain, we're talking J.C.
mhm.
Horn, and I think Kelvin Joseph. The guys that were all taken in the first 2 rounds. His stats against those guys were like ridiculous. The problem at Tennessee was the quarterbacks that he had there the whole time he was there were crap. And you saw the exact same thing with Marquez Callaway. Callaway looks all right now, but maybe the problem wasn't the wide receivers at the end of the day, but still a very good player overall. And Mike Williams probably not coming back after this year. He's on the last year of his deal.
Yeah,
They
I don't
probably
think
don't
so
have
either.
enough money. They probably don't have enough money at this point in time to sign him anyways. So he's going to step up in that role. We've seen him step up in the role when Mike Williams and Keenan Allen have been out. Some people really like Jalen Guyton, but Jalen Guyton is a very, very linear player. He's a guy that can run a straight line really fast.
Yeah,
He can run a slant route, and that's about it.
yeah. Josh Palmer can definitely do a lot more than Guyton. Guyton, like if you see Guyton's plays, his catches, it's basically all downfield. If you really
Run a
see them.
straight line or run a slant play. That's about it.
Literally. I actually do really like the Palmer guy. I think with Williams, I don't think they're taking Williams back, and Palmer will be that next Williams guy. And he's gonna be a guy that can definitely stay healthy and everything. And I think Palmer is definitely the next man.
Yeah. And like I said, I wrote a bunch of names down, so I'll go through some of them just like real quick too. So Michael Carter is one that I really do like. I liked him before the draft. And it's not like this is a great running back class either. He's shown enough this year that they're not just going to bring somebody else in and really replace him. They might bring somebody else in like in free agency to kind of, spell him at times. Tevin Coleman, please retire.
Honestly, he's not a starter anymore. The day someone told me that he was starting this week, I was like, no, he's not. He's really not going to score anything in fantasy.
Yeah. But Michael Carter, he's been great. And I think as this offense is going to be, I'm like a closet Jets fan now.
I'm not a big Zach Wilson guy. You're a Zach Wilson's guy. I'm not a big Zach Wilson guy.
I'm a big Zach Wilson guy. I'm a big Michael Carter guy. I was not a big Elijah Moore guy. Just because everything they did at Ole Miss was just like designed, like they made all these like special gimmicky plays and design. Is everything everybody said about Rondale Moore, like how he's all gimmicky and gadgety, like that was Elijah Moore at Ole Miss, but people just loved him for whatever reason.
I think Elijah Moore, I actually enjoy seeing Elijah Moore in the Jets offense, but when the Jets drafted Elijah Moore, I was not a big fan of it.
See, I hated that pick because it was in the beginning of the second round. I'm like, you can take a valuable player here.
Exactly.
He's only going to be a slot wide receiver in the NFL level.
Yep.
Maybe he's this much better than Jameson Crowder, but right now he's not going to be better than Jameson Crowder to start off with.
No.
And if you go back and watch his film, I watch a lot of film on NFL prospects. Every time he was pressed, like he had a very difficult time getting off press coverage. He can't play on the outside. He's not big enough, first of all, and he just doesn't have the skill set to do that. So he has to be a slot. And I'm not big on drafting guys that can only play slots in like the first 2 rounds, unless they have like something extra. Like Rondale Moore, he has that extra juice. And like he is a bull. He can run through people if he wants to. His problem is he just gets hurt. And most of them have been really, really freak injuries though. Like the one he had in college where he tore his hamstring. He should have tore his ACL, but because he's so strong, his base is so strong, he actually ended up tearing his hamstring instead.
Imagine that.
Like it's ridiculous. It was kind of like, it's like Bo Jackson when he hurt his hip. It's because he was so strong and the force was just kept going. Like it's crazy what these freak athletes can do.
Yeah, but Elijah Moore, definitely, I agree with you, though. I don't think he's going to be more than a slot receiver. But Michael Carter, I really enjoy seeing out there on the field. He can score and he can run. And in Dynasty, if you drafted him, you got the next Dynasty running back.
Oh, and he could be like the next kind of like Austin Eckler back where he's not this big guy. He's a similar size. He can catch the ball all right. His biggest thing, like he played in a backfield with Javonte Williams. They were splitting it. So it's like, well, both those guys, it's like, how would they handle the NFL? Because they've always split things. But he was more productive there. Like in terms of efficiency, like yards per carry and all that stuff. I know Javonte had all the fancy numbers because he broke all the tackles, he scored more touchdowns and everything like that. But on like a play-by-play basis, just doing what he does. And what he does really well that people don't, not sure a lot of people do know this, is he's really good at setting up defenders. So he'll act like he's going one way and then go the other way. He did it a lot at North Carolina, and that's something that's really underrated because he's not going to have that breakaway speed. He's not the fastest guy, but what he does well, he moves very well laterally.
Yeah, he's got that juking potential.
And then like a couple other guys there, I threw around Rondale Moore's name. I think he is going to be better next year. Like they've really limited how they used him this year. Cliff Kingsbury just sucks at calling offense. So that's a whole nother story.
I'm iffy on Rondale.
What?
I'm iffy on Rondale Moore.
You see, but Christian Kirk's going to be gone. AJ Green's probably gone. They might bring him back for a year just because. So then you just have DeAndre Hopkins and him. I don't know if Hurts is a free agent. They definitely should bring Hurts back if he's a free agent. I don't know that one off the top of my head, but I think if they figure out how to actually use him, he could be very valuable.
If they figured out how to use him, but I enjoyed Kirk and he hasn't been that guy.
See, the thing with Rondale Moore is kind of another guy that he kind of needs. He should play in the slot more often than not. And Christian Kirk's been stuck in the slot this year. So I think Kirk actually moves on. I'm not sure where he goes, but if he gets rid of that role and Rondale can go into that role and thrive, this might be a good time to pick up Rondale Moore on the cheap because everybody's kind of down on him. Or
that's true.
Most people are down on him, at least. Like if you were a guy that loved him going in, you're probably not going to trade him away for cheap, but somebody that just kind of took him to take him, you probably get him for cheap off them.
Yeah, and because they'd be ready to get rid of him.
Yeah. My other guy was KJ Osborne that I was talking up before the season. I said pick him up in Dynasty because he's like 2% roster in Dynasty leagues before the year. As soon as Irv Smith went down, they're like, we're going to use more 3 wide receiver sets. I'm like, okay, pick him up because he's their most talented wide receiver. I do love D.D. Westbrook. I've always loved D.D. Westbrook, but he's coming off an ACL anyways. But if you want to talk about some guy that was the Jaguars ruined, that's
D.D. Westbrook. Yep.
They're like, okay, this guy runs a 4.3 and can burn. Like he was literally burning people at Oklahoma by like 15 yards. He won the Biletnikoff. We're going to make him a slot wide receiver and only run 8-yard routes. What?
D.D. Westbrook should have been the Allen Robinson there. And then DJ Chark, he's not that guy.
DJ Chark, oh God, he's a story for a different day. If he ever developed in anything, like he could be so good if he ever developed into anything, but he's just what he is at this point in time.
Yep.
And then I do have Devonta Smith listed down below too, because like he really hasn't truly broken out this year, but like the things you see him do on the field, he's had like 4 or 5 touchdowns called back due to penalties, like away from the play. So there is that potential there. The Eagles are kind of figuring out this offense overall. He's had those big boom games. He's kind of had some games where he only gets 3 catches for 30 yards too, but they've been more run heavy at this point in time. I think it's going to get better with him. I don't know if they keep Jalen Hurts though or not. I love Jalen Hurts. I love the player that he is. I love the person that he is, but I think the Eagles are going to get impatient and try to trade for somebody, whether it's a Russell Wilson or they want Watson, but Watson doesn't want to go there. They hired, I don't know if you know this, but they hired like their own private investigators to look into his whole thing. And they were willing to make a trade for him, but he doesn't want to go there at all.
I actually did not know that. I'd never heard of them hiring them. That's interesting. But
the Eagles, for as many things as they do wrong, they take some things very seriously.
That is true.
Just not drafting wide receivers.
So, as we just saw in the comments, there's breaking news that Carson Wentz is on the COVID list now, which is very huge for the Colts and very huge for Miami because Miami's going against the Colts.
Raiders, right?
Excuse me, Raiders. Yeah. Right? Yeah. My fault. But yeah, no, that is very big because the Colts really had the potential to take the division.
Yeah, and as much as I don't like the Colts, I want them to win the division because I'm just so sick of people trying to hype up Mike Vrabel for nothing.
Yeah, no, honestly.
Oh, you won
But
all these. You won these games without Derrick Henry and AJ Brown and Julio Jones. I'm like, he won 2 games against terrible teams, and he lost to the Jets and the Texans.
exactly. But anyways, that's going to do it. The 2022 breakouts. I had Cole Kmet and Keyshawn Vaughn for 2022, and you had Josh Palmer, Michael Carter. You also mentioned KJ Osborne, Rondale Moore, and Devonta Smith. So these are all guys that you want to trade for now before they actually break out next season. But anyways, that's going to do it here for this week's episode. Anyways, catch us next week. Hopefully Coach Craig Sport can come back. And my name is Fernando. I'm your host of Sports Time HQ. Make sure to follow us all over social media, and make sure to also follow our guest star, Coach Craig Sport. No S at the end. Don't forget about that one. And hopefully we'll have him back next week to end the regular season fantasy. And if you have a Week 18 fantasy playoffs. So we will see you all next week. Don't go anywhere.